to Beyond the Set, a show where we take an inside look at locally produced entertainment. On this edition of Beyond the Set, we will be looking at the motion picture Shadowland, which shot on location in the city of St. Charles. Joining us will be director Wyatt Weed and the lead actress Caitlin McIntosh.
I'm one of those kids who got swept up in the Star Wars craze. I saw Star Wars in 1977 and I was bitten, and I was shooting Super 8 films by 78. I think the first real thing I did was I got started in cable television in public access. I worked in St. Louis at a facility here called American Cable. I don't even know if they exist anymore. In '84, I went to school at Webster University for the film studies program they had there. And in the mid-'80s, there weren't a lot of film opportunities in St. Louis, but a couple of films came through. One of them was Hail, Hail, Rock and Roll, and I managed to get on that crew. And then in '88, I decided to make the move to Los Angeles, and that was mostly I went out there to pursue acting, but I ended up getting into special effects, which eventually led into production. So after doing model making and special effects of different kinds on a bunch of different big feature films, I got into production, and by the early '90s I was writing and producing low-budget films. And then I started second unit directing, which is, picking up all the little bits and pieces that first unit can't get. And then by the late '90s I was doing features. It begins with a woman, and you come to find her name is Laura. And Laura wakes up in a construction site ditch, covered with mud. Her face has been beaten, her neck has been cut. She can't speak, she can't remember who she is. Basically, she crawls out of this hole in the middle of the night, apparently left for dead. She starts wandering the city, sort of trying to figure out who she is and where she came from. And she starts seeing things that jog her memory. She sees an old calendar with an old picture of an old like 1800s storefront on it. So she starts remembering things, but all the things she's remembering are from the 1800s, 1897 to be exact. So here she is in modern day, having flashbacks of turn of the century, and then she finds that there's someone trailing her, pursuing her, and you don't know if this is the person who put her in the ground to begin with. You don't know if this was someone who's coming to help her. So as she's piecing her memory back together, these forces are closing on her, and then she starts finding out that she has some special abilities that don't seem normal. She's fairly strong, she's fairly fast, and these are as much of a shock to her as to everybody who's pursuing her. So she inadvertently gets in trouble with the police. She inadvertently causes some trouble around town. So now everybody's chasing her. And as the action gets faster and as things get more tense, she starts piecing more and more of it together, and it all just sort of builds to the end scene, and you get all the answers at once.
Laura is left for dead in the beginning of the movie. We don't know what has happened to her. We can obviously see she's been beaten and just somebody doesn't want her, somebody wants her dead, and she's not. Throughout the movie, she's trying to find her way. These people are coming after her. She doesn't know who these police are, and she doesn't know who's chasing her throughout the movie. And it's just her struggle to try and get away and be safe, and by the end we figure out the mayhem that she's caused all comes to one great high point. So.
Several years ago, I reunited with a good friend of mine, Gail Gallagher, who eventually went on to become the producer of this feature. And we were shooting a short film here in St. Charles, and we needed a really beautiful outdoor cafe. We didn't know where to shoot it. We'd scouted all over the city. We'd scouted way out into the county. And in contacting Gail, she said, well, why don't you come down to Old Town? Why don't you come down to Main Street, St. Charles? So I'd never really been down to Main Street. Well, when I got there, I couldn't believe that there was this beautifully preserved street in the middle of essentially a modern town. And we found a little cafe there, and we ended up shooting the short film there. And everyone was so pleasant and so cooperative and just so happy to have us there. I saw all these really cool, spooky, dark back alleys and neat little alcoves and little stairways and little nooks and crannies, and I didn't know what I wanted to do there yet, but I knew that there were a lot of really neat visual things in this old town. So then when it came to doing Shadowland, it just so happens that there are 1897 flashback sequences in the film. You could shoot in Soulard, you could shoot in Laclede's Landing, you could shoot in Old Main Street. And honestly, Laclede's Landing and Soulard, we didn't even try because they just didn't seem to have the right feel, and we perceived maybe the difficulty of shooting there as being a little bit more. Since we'd already had such a good experience with St. Charles, we just decided to give it a try. And so it was mainly about the age, the time period that was historically represented there, and then just the cooperation we'd had from the business owners that drew us back.